Chapter 7. How are we going to do that? She asked. You can only trace the places you've been at least once. But I can drive anywhere, Roth replied, casually, every inch of a modern warlord. She was to return to her home in ripped clothing, with her skin still flushed from last night, her body still stained for a vampire's touch. How lovely. She would never live this down, and for an immortal, never was particularly woeful proposition. Yes, going back to Valhalla would mean a possibility for escape, but he could kill one of his sisters if they tried to free her. When he rose and strode to his closet, she studied his body, noting yet again how incredibly strong he was. He turned and tossed her button down, catching her gaze just as it drifted south to his hard shaft. She almost missed the shirt, and he smirked, making her jerk her face away. Come here, he ordered, and she dragged her face over. His eyes reached out to pile her hair up, just as so he could lean down and breathe along her neck, then murmur in her ear. Bride, this is embarrassing. I thought I've caught you staring at my cock, making her quiver. She teased him the same way when he did all these years ago. He added in a sensual rumble, You like it, don't you? The question sunk in. Her eyes went wide with disbelief, the spell broken. How could he ask her that when she couldn't help but be forced to answer? His lips hovered over her shoulder. He said, Answer me honestly. I want to curl up between your legs, rest my head on your hip, and draw you over into my mouth and taste you for hours, she almost said, then negotiated with her mind into another honest answer. It's too big. He dropped her hair, smirking again. So it terrifies you more than tantalizes? He asked, using the words she remembered very well. Knowing he was getting his revenge little by little, she gritted her teeth against her answer, but lost. Both. He clutched under her chin. I'll be sure to break you in slowly, but do easily for the first few times. Mist of the witty banter and dripping sexual innuendo was speechless. Break her in? How arrogant. When he turned for the shower, she tried not to stare at his backside and how it tampered with his narrow hips and his muscled ass, with the hard hollows on the side. She'd been right. It did beg to be clutched. Down her fangs, it was curling. I believe you like everything about me, he rumbled from the side of the bathroom. She gazed at the ceiling, embarrassed, as she couldn't remember ever being before. Of course, he'd known she was staring, probably by the holes she was burning into his skin. As she dressed, she thought that he was right. She was tantalized, and she did like everything about him physically. The way he'd made her feel last night left no doubt in her mind that he could not only get her to ask for him inside her, but beg. She needed to escape before then, before he claimed her. He hadn't drunk from her and they hadn't had sex yet. As long as those two things stayed sacred, she could get past his patch in her life. When he returned to the room, just like a male dream, she felt like shuffling her feet, for her ridiculous get-up, dripped in his shirt that fell to her knees. She had never felt insecure before, but she didn't have long to ponder it, because he put his hands on her waist. Are you ready? He asked, staring down at her. Ready? To kiss him? Hug him? Get on her knees? What is he talking about? He pulled her to his body, wrapping his arm around her. Close your eyes, he commanded, and so she did. Open them. Suddenly they were in a garage. This was the first time she'd traced and been able to think about the process. She'd dropped an intoxi spell or two in her day and found tracing on par with that. She was unsteady at first, but the air smelled like bayou at high tide, which she liked, and was heavy with humidity. New Orleans, but where? What is this place? She asked, breaking away from him to look around. An old restored mill north of the city, Roth answered, where it stayed while scorching the streets for you as long as I could manage every night, before I collapsed in agony and weakness. She looked away quickly, fighting the flare of guilt, and spotted his cars. She tried to be cool, but of course, Roth caught her eyeing them, especially the Maserati Spider, and she knew he'd seen her flicker of appreciation. The Valkyrie prized fine things. They were acquisitive to a fault. It simply couldn't be helped. Her own mother had told her that Mist's first words were roughly translated, "Gimme." He opened her door to the Spider, and once she was inside, she curled up on the soft leather, loving it. Joining her, he cast her an inscrutable expression. We're fortunate, Mist. You'd want for nothing as my wife. She'd already been fortunate. She already wanted for nothing. The Cavern divided their collective earnings from investments, and they take away was always incredibly generous. She had enough money to buy any clothing that struck her fancy, to purchase $2,000 hand-painted lingerie sets to placate her obsession. In a deadened tone, she just mumbled, "Oh joy, I'm rich." He commanded her to direct him to her house. Not in itself an unforgivable crime. I mean, they didn't hide their address like the Batcave, yet they didn't often have trespassers at Valhalla. When his breath hissed in at the sight of the manor, she was reminded why. "This is where you live?" he bit out, forearms resting on the steering wheel, his tone incredulous. She tried to see from his eyes. Fog shrouded the property, and bolts of light illuminated it in statical rhythm. There were lightning rods everywhere, but sometimes they didn't catch all the lightning, as evidenced by the massive oaks in the yard still lazily giving up smoke. And the wood nymphs, those damn little hookers, they were behind on the repairing of the trees. If Miss heard them whine, "But Misty baby, there was this orgy," as an excuse one more time. "It's hellish," Roth said. She tilted her head. In the olden days, they used to stick a sword into the ground to mark a grave, and she'd always fancied that the rods made this place look like one of those massive ancient burial sites. Even at a distance, shrieks could be heard coming from within. The Valkyrie often screamed. If Anika got angry enough, car alarms in 3 parishes would blare. Okay, it might be a bit hellish. "It's time you had someone take you away from here," he bit out as he continued closer. She frowned at him. "Have you forgotten? This is where I belong. This is where I was raised. I'm as much of a monster as what lies within." "You're a lot of things, bride, but you're not a monster." "You're right. And what monsters like you fear beneath their beds. But now you're in my bed, where you belong." "So in this life of yours that you've crazed mind and visions, I'm not going to fight, am I?" He shook his head as he parked down the gravel drive. "No, I'm well aware that you're desperately strong, I know other beings would rather die than risk to your wrath, but I won't ever allow you to put yourself in danger again. Is this understood? She batted her eyelashes at him in a surly voice and said, "Because I'm just too damn precious to you?" "Yes," he answered simply, making her roll her eyes. He got out of the car and she followed, but he quickly traced to open the door for her, looking at her as if she was crazy not to wait for him to assist her. Perfect, a gentleman warrior, which she was discovering she might have a weakness for. As they walked to the drive, he said, "Hold my hand." "Big vampire squid of the wiggly vanguard get away." He turned to her, his brows drawn. "I just want to hold your hand." What was that flutter in her stomach? And why didn't she mind that he wanted to slip his big hand into her tiny ones, enveloped and secured? They walked like this to the side of the cavernous 30-room mansion. He was tensed here, ready to trace him away in a split second, and she almost felt sorry for him when she realized he'd never seen anything like her home before. He was off the lore, and yet in so many ways he was a human as he'd once been. When he made her point out the window, which was her room, showing him a destination, he was able to trace them again. Inside, he scanned the lace and silk-filled space with those discerning eyes, studying everything within. She was the girly girl of the coven, which her candles and her silk sheets, her room and her lifestyle, the most human-like of any of them. Her room laid next to Kara's, which housed only a Spartan sleeping mat, her ancient winged helmets, and a string of vampire fangs she'd taken as trophies. Across the gallery was room of petite, timid Emmeline. Though she was part Valkyrie, she was a vampire through and through, and made her little nest on the floor under the unused bed. It could be argued that Emma proved that not all vampires were evil, and that the Coven could coexist with one. Yet, Emma had been the daughter of a beloved Valkyrie, and that half was beloved to temper the other. The exception had made for her, but Miss often wondered if she was the only one who noticed Emma flinched and trembled. Her big blue eyes glistened with apprehension whenever the Coven shrieked and railed about killing leeches. Present company accepted really was a weak statement when one thought about it. "So what do you want me to pack?" Mist asked. He raised an eyebrow. "You should be used to this. Choose clothes as if you were going away with your lover." Her hands clenched as she crossed to the drawers that housed her Agant Purgatoire, Stamp and Pink, Victoria's Secrets, and Julian Sherry collections, as those were mass purchases from just last week. Depends on which lover. She plucked out a red leather quarter-cup bra and a baby doll teddy that was completely translucent, then held them up for him. "Both," he rasped, his expression pained. She saw he was getting hard again. He noticed her noticing, and his eyes darkened. Amusing. Assessing a brisk manner, she crossed to the closet to gather a weekender bag. But he picked her up bodily by the waist and set her out of the way to gather a 4 foot long, massive suitcase. He dropped it at her feet. Fill it because you're never coming back to this place. At his words, she nodded, making it somehow sarcastic, and he knew she was thinking to herself how wrong he was. He exhaled wearily. If he had to battle against her for the rest of his life, he would. He moved to assist her, but every drawer in her room was full of thongs, hose, lace, and little silk nightgowns that made his blood pound. She had a drawer of nothing but garters. It would take him months to bet all these off her body. He frowned. Women wear clothes like this for a lover. How many did she currently have? When he imagined them relishing her beauty, the gold chains snapped against her body as she wrenched on them. He crumpled the iron post end of her bed. Now she smirked at him, reading him oh so clearly. Nikolai, if you can't control your jealousy, we're heading straight for divorce. She tapped her finger on her chin and added, and make a note that I'll expect the house, the kids, and the hellbound. Actually, you can keep that swag house. He scrolled before turning away, examining her belongings for more insight. Her film collection was copious. He was unfamiliar with them, as he was with most things that had to do with leisure time. Which of these do you prefer? She clearly hated having to answer this question and struggled against it each time. I like romance and horror. A bit desperate. She eyed him. Funny. I used to think so. He ignored that and tossed a few DVDs in the bag. She put the inside of her forearm behind dozens of bottles of fingernail polish, pushing them over her dresser into the bag. The look she gave him dared him to say something. Nail polish was out of his realm and of his understanding, and he merely just shrugged at her. He crossed to her bathroom, searching the cabinets and drawers. There are no medications, no things females need. I don't get ill and I don't have those type of functions, just like you, vampire. Not at all. He wondered if she could get pregnant. Perhaps he didn't have to be so careful with that as he had planned. None. Why? You can force me to have sex with you all non-stop. Why would I force you when I can barely keep your hands and mouth off me now? Roth, darling, she purred, smiling so sweetly. I can't wait for the next time to get my mouth on you. In an instant, her smile faded, and she snapped her teeth and yanked her head back as if she was chewing something free. He didn't even have time to cringe, because she wriggled from his shirt then. At the sight of her naked body, his cock shot hard as steel. She sensually dragged her underwear up her legs and then bent over in only the thongs she stepped into a skirt. Just as he was fighting the overwhelming urge to take her hips and feed himself into her, shrieks erupted from downstairs. On the edge of this place, he moved to peer over the landing outside of her bedroom and found 10 more Valkyrie downstairs. Some were lounging in front of a TV, with bowls of popcorn in front of them that they didn't eat. One was up and sprang with what looked like a ghost or phantom. When the pair crossed in front of the television, the others screeched and threw popcorn at them. A small Valkyrie stalked in the door. She was covered in blood. Kara! They shouted in greeting, completely unsurprised by her appearance. What did you get into tonight? One asked from her perch on the mantel. Kara pulled her sword sheath from her back. My human unknowingly went into a demon bar. A demoness thought to make her lover jealous by using my charge. She shook her head. It was everything I could do to keep the demon from ripping Michael's sword out with his teeth. How do you do it? Without blinking an eye, she said, Well, I ripped the demon's throat with my teeth. When they all laughed, Roth raised an eyebrow, vowing that Miss would never see the malicious creatures again. Never. Without their interference, she would be kinder, gentler. She sure as hell couldn't get worse. Have Mr. Daniel returned? Kara asked. No, I expect this from Mist. Because she often ran off with men? But certainly not from Daniela. She never returned from the quarter. Well, this hit keeps coming. I just saw Ivor the Cruel in the quarter. When they laughed again, she said, You should know I do not joke about vampires unless they're dead. They sobered, and one asked, Has he returned from Mist? Somebody needs to warn her. Roth quickly turned to her room, but Mist was gone. He traced to the window, which was open, then to the end of the field below. When he caught sight of her sprinting away, he yelled for her to stop, but somehow she kept running. She was fast and might have outrun him with her unnatural speed as she covered miles, but he traced, lunging from that momentum to snag her ankle, tripping her forward. She wore plugs in her ears from a music player. Enraged, he yanked them from her, heard the music blaring, and threw the contraption into the woods beyond. She'd almost escaped him before he'd claimed her. Thoughts grew distant. A shadow fell over his vision. He pinned her down, tossed her skirt, then ripped the silk between her legs, glorying in that feeling. He was finally going to take his bride. Hazily, he realized she was still struggling from him. Her words echoed inside him. Roth, you want it? I'll fight you for it. He would always fight for her. Always. Would he fight for her right to her body? Then you're mine. So, that is actually the end of chapter 7. Wow. Isn't that kind of rape? Please like, subscribe, and leave your comments to the reading down below. Thank you. Until chapter 8. Bye, guys.